welcome to the We Are Worship Wednesdays here on Blab. My name is Morgan. I have Wisdom Moon as my co-host here with me. Wisdom, hello.
What's up, guys?
Where in the world are you, Wisdom?
I am actually down the hallway from you in a different office.
Why did you tell everyone that? You could have played it off that you were in Key West or something.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome.
Okay, well, anyways, today we have a very special guest with us. We have Joel Buckner from NCC Worship in Washington. But before we get into Joel, we're going to talk about a few things on We Are Worship.
Yeah.
So we have a free song of the week, and it is called Praise the King by Corey Voss. It's a great tune. You should go get it. You should play it at your Easter worship service. I kind of feel like I'm talking like Phil Loose now. So I'm getting the hang of this. And then the next thing we have is the hymn of the month, and it's called Oh Praise the Early One, and it's sung by Michael Farron. It's a great song. Hymn-like, great. Oh, your whole congregation will love it. Okay, yep. So if you need any resources, if you're looking for Easter stuff, go to We Are Worship. WeAreWorshipUSA.com. I thought it was just WeAreWorship.com. You can go to We Are Worship. I'll let Wisdom take over here introducing our special guest we have. I think I'm done with all this head motion stuff.
This is great.
So yeah, we're joined by Joel Buckner from National Community Church and NCC Worship. And today's topic I'm really excited about is how to create a team that outlasts you. So I'm really excited to dive into that with Joel.
Yes, how to create a team that outlasts you. Joel Buckner at NCC Worship.
You practiced a lot for this.
Do what?
You practiced a lot for this.
I know. I stayed up till midnight, half past midnight or something, however they say it over there. 30 past.
If you're watching us live, you can submit questions in the chat room. You can actually do a / and a Q, and it will actually add it to our question box to the left. Or you can just type it into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So share your thoughts, your comments, your questions as we're talking. So Joel, maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, look, I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. Got some parents, as the rest of the world should have too. I have 3 brothers and grew up leading worship. Started about 12 years old. Taking over from my aunt. She taught me how to direct a choir and learn how to lead worship from the people that lead at that time, John Stevenson and Keith Dobbins and a lot of different people who led at our church. And so continued to lead from there till I went to high school. College at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, where I took up psychology, right? My mentor at the time was like, Joel, you need to take up music. You're going to do a lot of music. And I was like, as any other 18, 19-year-old, I knew what I was doing. So I was like, I need to go to school for psychology. And now here I am doing music, right? That's crazy. So now I've been doing music or leading worship in some capacity or singing background since about, like I said, 12, and then more, I guess, professional from 19. Started singing background for a lady named Tanya Baker. Learned a lot from her and Sharon Conyers at Revival Center Ministries in Dayton. Then moved to Nashville, which I love, one of the greatest cities ever, to be a songwriter, and did some great stuff there. Met Curtis Parks, who is our leader here at NCC in DC. We led worship together at Oasis Worship Center there. And man, here we are, kind of almost full circle from Miami to DC now. So as far as my background, just as far as leading, it started as young as 12, leading a choir of 75, worship team, then on to college doing the same thing. And it seems like everywhere I go, I try to sit in the back of a church or sit in the back of somewhere and always get pulled up to lead and do something. So here we are. So I'm excited about
Do
today.
you play any instruments?
I don't. That's crazy.
Oh, you're just a singer. You're just a
I
singer.
just sing. I just get up and
Hey,
sing.
that's not right.
It's not just a
You
singer.
say what? I'm just a
saying
singer.
you're just a singer because you can perfect that craft, and then you're not just a singer anymore. You're like the singer,
The singer.
Yeah, because you got some pipes, man. You got some pipes.
Well, thanks.
You
I
wanna
appreciate that,
sing
Morgan.
us a little ditty? You wanna sing us a little ditty?
No.
Come on.
Putting him on the spot. So, Joel, are you full-time at NCC?
Yes, I am full-time here at NCC. I'm one of the worship leaders. We have 8 locations, so we have worship leaders at each location. And I lead at the Lincoln campus. So been here for about 4 years now, or going on 4 years this year. So it's been fun. I love it. Great time.
Awesome.
Great people, great team.
Yeah.
That's what they pay me to say.
Yeah. I've noticed, like, at your church, a lot of the worship leaders look young, like around your age, like they're a younger group of, worship leaders. And I think, I started leading worship when I was in college, and I've learned a lot since. But I think a lot of times worship leaders can get so busy in the week-to-week, duties of picking a set list, planning for worship service, that it's hard to sometimes step back and think about, like, how do I build a team, and how should I build a team? So let's start off by talking about, like, how you approach that.
Well, first, I appreciate you saying I'm one of the younger ones. I appreciate that. So awesome wisdom. I'm actually like one of the older ones. So that feels good.
You don't look a day past the 19 years old.
Get it right. Okay, great. 19 sounds great.
I'm serious.
I'm 36. So I've been.
You don't look it.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that, Morgan. And I love this accent. Please keep it going. Don't stop. All right. So
I'm going to try.
So for me, part of it is that I love developing people. And so my brain not only functions as far as being a creative, but then also a developer. Like, how can I pour into those around me? And so being able to, I guess, take time to invest in others, it comes pretty easy for me. And so one way to draw out from what we're doing as far as music is just to realize you have people that you're working with, right? And it's not just us. And so I think if we don't remember to do that, we'll end up with no team, because then it'll be about us, the worship leader who's up front. And so I think that's where this whole idea or concept of creating a team that outlasts you actually came from a couple lessons from me leading here at NCC. Just last year, I was in charge of Boston, these are our campuses here. So Boston campus, our Saturday night campus, and then Lincoln Theater. So I had a number of campuses to take, charge of, and it was hard. I was like, man, how am I supposed to pour into what at the time maybe 30 different people at different campuses and make sure that everybody's taken care of, everybody's invested in. And I thought I was a great leader. I thought I had it down packed and was ready to go because I had done it for so long. But at our church, as we grew, we had another campus that opened up, and then we became 8 campuses. And it's funny because one thing that our pastor says, he says that that blessings always complicate your life, right? And so our complication then became that now we have 8 campuses. Now, where do we do, And so for me, my role was to go to one of our other campuses, Lincoln, to lead full time. When I left Boston campus, there were some holes that were there, and I didn't realize that the holes were there until I left, because what happened was I built that team around me and not around the people who were there volunteering. And so once I left, it was like this big gaping hole that was like, well, who's supposed to fill that? I don't know. You know, they selected songs based upon, me singing, or we selected emails based upon what I sent out, and it was all my idea kind of thing versus getting a full perspective, everyone to buy into it. So that's kind of where this came from a little bit. But yeah.
So sorry, I'm gonna go into my American mode right now.
That's fine.
More
More
my Southern mode. But okay, you say you thought you were a good leader, and then you realize, whoa, okay, maybe there's some things that I need to work on or like learn. So what's like the biggest thing you can say if you're gonna try to be a leader of whatever it is? Like, what's one of the main like characteristics or strengths that you should have?
I am one of the greatest things you should have. One is vision, and then the ability to be able to implement, to cause ownership of that vision, right? So to see beyond the current where we are right now, but to give the people something to believe in, and then allowing them to be a part of building toward that. I think that trait is one of the biggest things. So I was watching this video by Seth Godin, and there's this new thing called Skillshare. I don't know how new it is, but I just found out about it. And he was talking about the difference between a freelance, a freelancer, or one that is an entrepreneur. And he was saying that a freelancer is one that gets paid to do the work or skill that they have, and it's built around that individual. Where entrepreneurship is built around the vision of one that allows others to feed into it, to grow it, to live beyond them. And so he said, when you're starting a business, you have to choose which one you want to be, whether you want to be a freelancer, you want to be an entrepreneur, and neither one is bad. Neither one is like, oh, I need to be an entrepreneur more than a freelancer, or I need to be a freelancer. It's not one of those kind of either ors. It's just finding out which one you're wired to be. And so part of the challenge that I saw as I talked to different worship leaders, I wonder how many, and this might be a little, I said some people might be mad at me saying this. I think a lot of our worship leaders today are more freelancers than they are entrepreneurial in their thinking. And when you say that, it creates this kind of where we build our worship teams around an individual or an ego that needs to be fluffed up a little bit. And we forget that there are people that we need to be ministering to, or growing or developing. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it comes from, because I think as worship leaders or directors or whatever frame that you come from, I think we need to, our job is to help people grow, right? To become, whether they're doing a new song or whether we're doing arts, or now I'm starting to hear the term experience director, where people are in charge of creating experiences at churches. But all that is to help people grow towards who God has called them to be and who God's ordained them to be, right? And we cause them to grow. But I think a lot of times, many of us, like I said before, have gotten to a point where and when you were asking, Morgan, like, I feel like the way I was leading at Boston, I was leading people towards me being the end all, say all. Like, well, how do we run this team? Well, let me call Joel. Well, how do we do this? Well, let me call Joel. Well, how do we do this new song? Well, let me call Joel. Instead of how can we as a team grow and make this ownership happen all the way throughout, the team, whether, it's just me or whoever's on the team. And so what happened, like I said, when I left or had to go to a new campus, it was almost like, I feel like it's almost like, well, Joel's not here anymore. So what do we do again? He's not here for us to fall on. So I think that was a growth area for me as a leader that I needed to grow in and understand more of. So
yeah, I like the distinction you made between the freelancer and the entrepreneur. Do you think a worship leader can actually learn to become an entrepreneur if they're more of a freelancer?
I think they can learn to become that, definitely. I think the first realization is that we have to realize that we are functioning more about our own selves versus a team, right? They have to I think because in today's society, we're more narcissistic. We're more about us. We're more about, well, how good do I look? Let me take my good Snapchat photo, or let me take this good Instagram selfie, or whatever it might be. We're into ourselves there, just like that. Just like that. So we're more into ourselves. And I feel like even within worship, we become drawn into ourselves. Like even worship leaders, I feel like we've picked the songs that we like best versus what connects to our congregation most,
Yeah.
We choose songs based upon, that made me feel great. And our church is still on hymns, and we're like, oh no, but we're going to sing this Hill song alive because it's what's new and it's what's hot, and so it's like, wait a minute, who's getting their ego stroked here? Is it more about what you look like on the stage, or is it our basic principle? Is it about connecting the people to a living, loving God? So I think there's a crossover point, but I think it's a ridding of ego, pride, and maybe even the desire to want to, in ministry. It's funny because I think some people do things out of just getting that value, like feeling valued, like, oh, I am somebody. I wasn't able to make it out in the whatever competition I got in, or I wasn't able to make it in the country world. They didn't like my album, so let me come to church, and I'll be accepted, and they'll clap for me because that's what we do in church. We're like, oh, that's so great. But like, is that the right place and time for us to do that? Right. So that's kind of, I do think there's a crossover point where that can happen though. But it'll take definitely one first, them humbling themselves and being able to cross over from it being about them to being about the people they're working with and the church they're leading.
What would you say to a worship leader who maybe they're doing this as a full-time or part-time thing, and just reading the title of this blab, they're going, well, I don't want anybody to outlast me. I want to keep my job. I don't want anybody to take my job, and maybe they feel threatened and they're concerned about that. What would you say to that person?
Man, give it up. There's always going to be somebody next, right? Leading worship is only a temporary thing. It's not something that's where we're going to be here forever, Heck, if that's the case, then David should still be here leading worship around, right? He's not here anymore. So the first thing is that, don't be intimidated by the next generation coming up. Invest in them. Take the time to take the wisdom that you've learned or your experiences and take time to teach them and build them rather than not giving them the opportunity. One thing I love, Andy Stanley says it. He says the value of life is always determined by how much somebody gives it away. So even when a younger worship leader is coming, or somebody is coming on the scene that may sing better than us, that may know how to lead better than us, it's not time to tell them, well, like, hey, no, you step back. No, engage them, bring them along on the journey, and allow them to outlast you, right? You want them to outlast you because that's how even Christianity has been passed on from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. It had to go from the Paul to the Timothy, had to go from David to Saul. You have to have the next person that's carrying it on, or else it'll die out.
Yeah.
When would you say you start leading that person to, I don't know, take your role, take your leadership? When is the time that you're like, okay, it's time to?
I think you have to be sensitive to it, right? One, I always check character first, especially when it comes down to leading worship. It's always a character thing. Are they in this for them, or are they in this because they care about who they're leading, right? So after I'm testing their character, I got to make sure they got talent, right? They can't they can't get up there and whatever it might be, like sing off, or like me, I trying to play. Wish y'all could hear me play acoustic guitar. I'm really great at it, right? No, I'm not. But making sure that they actually have some talent that can be developed, and then after that, it's assessing who they are. What are their strengths? What are their talents? What are their skill sets? Are they a better leader within a small group? Are they grouping? Are they able to lead in front of 10,000 people? Are they able to lead in front of 300? So knowing who I'm developing is the next step, So seeing it, calling it out in them, encouraging them to themselves fan that flame or gift it within them, And then after that, discipling them or coaching them into the way that, they should be fashioned versus what I want to see from them.
So how does that look practically when you're trying to raise somebody up and mentor them on a day-to-day basis? What do you do that maybe people can take away some practical tips?
Practical tips. So here we go. One, just simply letting somebody know you care first, right? That you care more about them as an individual than their talent. I think a lot of us, we tend to err on the side of, oh, you play great. Oh, well, then I need you on my team. But what about that mediocre player that has the potential, right? Taking them to the next level. So so the first thing I would do is calling out that gift in them, right? That might be just sitting aside for a coffee, or, if you're working full time, because not everybody works full time in ministry. So you might have a full time job. It might be just talking to them right after rehearsal, or inviting them over to your house for dinner with your family or whatever it might be. That's going to automatically show them from the first step that, they take an interest in who I am, right? The next thing after that is ask permission. I think a lot of people, we assume that we have that kind of relationship, but ask permission to say, hey, is it okay if I take some time to pour into you? Make sure that they also feel like it's the right step for them, because it's something that, you never want to talk to a brick wall, like, hey, you're going to be somebody, and they're not communicating anything back, so you want to make sure that they're open to this happening. The next step after that is then I would ask them to give me what their expectations are, because after asking them what their expectations are, then it allows me to say, okay, this is something that I can do. This is realistic with my time, with the talent and skill set that I have. These are things that I can show you, and then move on from there.
Awesome.
Kind of like what you were saying, the first thing was just to pour into them, just to kind of build that relationship. I think that's so important, and not even just like in what we're talking about, but anything in general. Like every topic in every meeting I've had this morning, it's been about relationships, and I think that's where that's the core of everything. To make sure that you have that relationship with that person, you build that trust, because you don't want, like, I'm not gonna want somebody to pour into me who I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, what's their motive, kind of thing? So I think you making that point just to like be intentional and invite them to your house, have dinner, like that kind of thing is so important. So I'm glad that you said that.
One thing that I have to remember, like I said before, I have the privilege of being able to work full time in this, and so I think majority of majority of the worship leaders don't do this full time, and so that makes a big difference, as far as what time do they have. And so making it practical, like really practical for the individual who's saying, well, you're telling me to make this team outlast me. I have a family, I have a job. I do this voluntarily. I don't get paid from the church. One thing that you can do is you don't have to pay anybody or spend an extra moment to allow people to come along with you on the journey. Right? What's that look like? Before you have a rehearsal, sit down and say, hey, here's the vision for where I see us going. How do you all see yourselves playing into that? I think we take on more responsibility as worship leaders. Sometimes we carry that pressure of this idea of making things happen and making this kind of the performance of our team, that we carry it on our shoulders, when it's almost like, I think if we were able to spread the responsibility amongst those who are volunteering with us, we would see that our team then would grow in a different way. Right. And so, but if you don't be vulnerable and open yourselves to your team to let them know that, like you said, Morgan, it's almost like that trust. It's trust both ways. It's you opening yourself and trusting that they'll not think that you're a weak leader because you're saying you need help, but then it's also trusting them to carry the vision. Right. And so you have to, again, it's getting back to what you were saying earlier, wisdom, when you're talking about somebody that's becoming from like more of a freelancer mindset, they have to let go of their ego at that point, right? To say, okay, I'm gonna let this go, and I'll let it ride with our team. You know, so to the person that does have all those responsibilities, it can be that simple. And my mind works this way, so I'm saying it's simple. So it might not be simple for somebody else, but I've taken the roles that I would normally do and broken them down into different roles, and said, okay, what do I do well? Because a lot of leaders think because I'm a proficient worship leader, then I'm proficient in all things. No, know what you're good at, right? Know what you do well. What I do well is development. What I do well is singing. You know, what I do well is knowing how to connect to a congregation. What I don't do well, I'm not the best MD. And I'm not going to sit there and try to stress myself out to become one, right? So I need what I need to do in essence. Then a good leader then gives away his weaknesses to people on his team to help his team be stronger. And as his team is stronger, then we're all strong as a collective group. And it's not built around, again, here, me, you know, but it's about what are we doing together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's that sense of unity.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the last church I led worship at, this may sound really bad, but I actually had the pastor's permission. In between services, we had Sunday school. And during Sunday school, I would sometimes skip out, take out a worship team member out to breakfast, and we would go down the street to McDonald's and just chat, you know, see what's going on in their life. And through conversation, things come up and you share, you know, what the vision is for the worship ministry. You hear what maybe their concerns are for the worship ministry. So I think, it's finding those like little pockets, you know, here and there where you can, you know, invest time and pour into that relationship. So you have people who you're training up.
True. Yeah, man. So I just say like a few things. I guess if I was to rattle off a few things, the first thing, one, just remember that us leading worship is only temporary, right? We're not here forever. So we need to be intentional, like we said earlier, with those who we're investing in and actively looking for people that we can disciple. All right. The next thing is learning those who are around you. Make sure that you know your team. So taking them out to eat, making sure you're finding out their life outside of worship and seeing, okay, is this the right time? Like Morgan, we were saying earlier, is this the right time for them to lead? Do they have the capacity for it? You know, and then finding even some people, even as I've been on mission with people and on our teams, it's calling out what you see in them, because some people don't see it. So I'm like, hey, no, you have a gift, and that gift that's in you, we're going to grow that. And they're like, are you serious? I would have never thought that about myself. Well, let me show you. And then recounting to them things that you've seen them do, from whether they've been an encouraging person to somebody else, or the way that they sang an ad lib or something, and you heard something in their voice like, oh, they can lead. We can grow that. And so learning those who are on your team, giving leadership away is one of the biggest challenges, I think, on worship, because again, we feel that responsibility from the pastor, or we feel that responsibility from ourselves to make sure that we own it. But like I said, me learning that, I learned that I cannot keep control of that. I can't do that, because the more I do that, the more when I leave, it'll fall with me. So Andy Stanley said something in a podcast that I heard, and I think it's on Leadership Cast. He was talking about the ability to be able to tell somebody, well, you decide. You know, so one story that I had, that there was a guy that leads worship here with me, David Cooley. He wanted to grow in being an MD, a musical director. And I was telling him, I said, you know what, man, I think that's awesome. I was like, but why don't you decide what the song will sound like? You decide the direction of where we'll go. And he was like, are you sure? I mean, you're the, I said, no. I want you to take time to do this. And he's come up with some some creative ideas that I probably never could thought of. And I was like, oh, that was pretty sweet. You know, as they say here, I'll be like, that's what's up. So I would say, that's what's up, man. You know, like that's really cool, you know? So he would have never stepped into that. And then I would not have gained anything from him if I didn't say, hey, you decide what it should be. Well, what songs are we singing? Well, let's decide that together. It doesn't always have to fall on me as a worship leader to decide what songs we're singing that weekend. No, why not draw from those that I'm leading with, you know? So making sure leadership is not about us, but it's about the people that we're growing. And the last thing I would say is like, it's to tell the story. Like, I don't feel like, as I'm reading through Psalms right now, it goes on to say like, and we told them from generation to the next generation, we sang his praises so that the next generation will know his name. And we sang so that the next generation will know the history, and we sang for the next generation. And I feel like here within worship, it's interesting. And maybe this is something we can do, We Are Worship, but how we told the story of worship, what has it done throughout generations? How has it changed? And then for us specifically at our churches, how has our worship grown? Like, where has it come from? Why are we here at this point right now? And that people knowing that gives them something to say, hey, we're a part of what this next generation is going to be about. That makes somebody say, oh man, yeah, heck yeah. I'm all in. Why? Because I'm now about to say there's going to be somebody 2, 3, 4 generations from now that's going to be able to tell this testimony of the faithfulness of God because of what I'm doing right now in this moment. And so it's going from telling the story, and then as we tell that story, then you go to which would be another podcast maybe, how worship leaders develop worship leaders, and then get those worship leaders to develop the next worship leader, because that's what we have to start doing, right? 3, 4 generations down the line, you have a worship leader that can look back up just like Jesus did, and he saw all his family, right? In Matthew, they go through and they read all of his the history of who had who begat who, and who. I'm like, who are these begats? I'm like, I want to know who came up with that word. But that's the same way it should be within our worship culture. Like, well, you have Paul Balash, who was great, right? Many people can look to him and say, it was him who got me started here, and then the next person say, well, this person taught me this, and this person, and we should see that happen. And I wonder, I don't know, like, and I keep saying this, but I just think sometimes we've become a little too selfish within worship leading, because it's about what platform can I create for me. Yeah. And honestly, it'll fall apart once we die off.
Wow. Wow, that's some really good stuff. Thanks so much for sharing that. And if you guys, as you listen or watch, have any thoughts or comments, feel free to email us at hello@weareworshipusa.com, or you can tweet it to us at weareworshipusa. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, recently Snapchat. So it's all We Are Worship USA.
Yeah.
And then
all worship.
if you want to watch this back, you can find it on our YouTube channel, We Are Worship Music. Joel, could you maybe share how people can connect with you online?
Man, me, it's just Joel Buckner everywhere. Yep. No, Joel Buckner on Twitter. Everybody. You spell that JoelBuckner. So Joel Buckner on Twitter, Joel.Buckner on Instagram, Joel Buckner on Facebook, Snapchat, Joel Buckner. Just anywhere it's all my name. I was able to grab them before they, got taken. But there are some other Joel Buckners in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So thank you guys for watching us and joining us live. Joel, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. That was really good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a delight having you on our blab.
Oh, that is so sweet. Next time I'll have an accent or something. I'll work on it.
All right.